Welcome, old family and new family, to Cipher Scholars, part education, part hip-hop, all culture. You're listening to your boy Brandon White, or Bushido Garvey, as I'm known in many MC circles.
And you're also listening to the co-host Rob Blow.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a spectacular, special, intellectual, thoughtful, active guest, the author of the recent book Black Appetite, White Food, Issues of Race, Voice, and Justice Within and Beyond the Classroom. We have sister, scholar, activist, multilingualist, Dr. Jamila Lyiscott. How you doing, sis?
I'm great. I feel even better now that I'm joining both of you.
Yes. Thank you so much for also rocking out with the CP time / hip hop time. You know, hip hop shows never start on time.
Nah, it's all love.
so we appreciate your patience with that. But you know, we don't have that much time with you, so we got to hop right into it. We usually ask an icebreaker question of sorts. So, you know, we know that you have a popular TED Talk where you do spoken word and you preface some of your chapters in Black Appetite, White Food with some poetry. So, do you have a poet name, or have you had poet names? And if so, what are they?
I've never had like an official poet name, but there was one moment. I started when I was a teenager. There was one moment where some of my I was in actually a Knicks special. There was something going on, a Knicks program when I was a teen, and I was named Voice. They just gave me the name Voice because they said there was just something about the way that my voice shows up in a space. It's not anything that stuck, but for that particular project and that particular moment, I really heard that. I heard the way that people received me in a meaningful way.
Indeed, and that definitely makes sense because of the spoken word poetry I've heard you perform. The voice definitely carries. It's louder than a bomb, for sure.
Thank you.
Indeed,
thank you.
So let's talk a bit about your book, Black Appetite, White Food, one of my favorite reads of the year for any classroom educator, especially if you're an educator of color, but for everybody, I think this is an essential and fast read.
Thank you.
Can you describe the difference between like the internal work of educators of color, what they have to do versus what white educators have to do to provide that social justice-centered education that you touch on in Black Appetite, White Food?
Yeah, for sure. A major priority for me in this book is guiding us. For those of us who care about social justice, we're often so invested in the social issues going on around us that we don't have much time to tend to the internal work that informs how we show up in the first place. And so the internal work definitely varies across different racial identities. For people of color, it's really important to interrogate so many ways that we have been inundated with the logic, with the narrative, with the standards, with all of the things that push us to adhere to white middle class standards as normal. Undoing that is almost like it's the air we breathe, right? So it's even hard to detect sometimes that we're measuring ourselves against that standard. So a lot of the internal work is for us to undo that lens, but also to undo the damage and the impact of that lens that by nature makes us devalue our own cultural practices just naturally, right? Like, so the framing of something as ghetto or ratchet or inferior is often just its relationship and proximity to whiteness, and it's not anything real. So we have that, and then the actual the damage that it does to our psyches to have to continue to try to gain access into spaces that I say in the book really require us to erase or assimilate, and damage ourselves in order to try to fit into those molds. For white people, even the most well-intentioned white people, there is, for me, one of the priorities in working with a lot of the white people that inform the way that I show up in the book is like that energy of being more invested in proving that you're not racist than actually doing the work to dismantle your internalized privilege. That's so important, right? So as soon as I show up to collaborate with white people, it's like they're trying to distinguish themselves from other white people by proving that they're not racist, and that's energy wasted, right? Like, so that internal work has to do with that, just kind of undoing the privilege that comes from being in a society where you're constantly bombarded with the message that your ways of knowing, a lot of the ways of knowing that you have align with institutional spaces in ways that it may not for students of color. And of course that varies across different white people, but I would say that those are some of the key things that has to happen. There was one more and it just slipped my mind, but it'll come back. I'll bring it back up.
No doubt. No doubt. Well, a lot of what you spoke on reminded me of what Beverly Tatum called like the smog that we all kind of breathe. And just depending on who you are, it impacts you differently. And it has always fascinated me how the energy used to defend that you're not a racist, not only A, is energy wasted, but also B, is energy towards racism. Right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And definitely in the classroom, I've seen that a whole lot. So, in the book, you open with one of my favorite poems. It says, "Dear teacher, before you tell us to splinter our souls for a seat at the table, teach us to splinter our hands as carpenters of our own justice." That was some Carter G. Woodson type of mentality right there. But you go on to say, "How dare you engorge us with this feast of feeble freedoms while our appetites remain an unquenched black hole." Now I'm about to ask a really loaded question.
All right.
Can you tell us, and perhaps in reference to what's talked about in Black Appetite, White Food, A, students of color souls are being splintered. How are they being splintered? Pardon me. B, what are the feeble freedoms of the feast that you refer to? And then C, what do you believe this justice carpentry looks like?
All right, couple of you just give me some softballs here. I see.
Yeah.
Nah, but I hear you. So the first question was about the splintered souls, right?
Yes.
I truly believe the act of having to compromise, to split, to erase, to assimilate, all of the work that it takes, all of the conditioning that it takes to step into institutional and ideological spaces that do not value you for who you are is soul splintering. We have to. Our parents, our grandparents, as a method of survival, have taught us how to do that work, right? How to enter spaces and act right or act white or do what we got to do to survive. I know that I've worked with many people of color. I bring up a lot language is really important to me, but there are a lot of people of color who speak about how intentional their parents were about changing their names when they came to this country, about making sure that they erased their accent, like as a method of survival. And then at the time, it felt like the right thing to do, but as they grew older and lost touch with their actual home cultures, they felt this deep loss, the gravity of the loss. And so it's knowing that language and culture and identity are so deeply intertwined. So and it's intertwined at the level of the soul. It's who we are. It makes us, there's levels to it. And so when we're asked to step into spaces and do our best to perform to standards and norms that devalue and strip those things, it's very damaging.
For sure. What are these feeble freedoms that you refer to?
So the feeble freedoms that I refer to it's just like the false promises that come with what it means to step into these spaces, right? Like if I do the right thing, if I act right, if I talk right, if I have my pants up, if I don't got a cap, then I'm going to get X, Y, and Z. And we know all that ain't true. We know that playing this game is, there's something called social reproduction theory, meaning like at the end of the day, you are working to be in the same social status that you started in the first place. That's how this system works. The system of power works. So all the carrot and the stick, right? This idea that there's this great social mobility, that there's all this change to come, that you'll have access to jobs and opportunities and financial freedom is not necessarily true at all, or even safety, right? Like if I'm a person of color and I dress right, then I will be, treated right. And that's not true. So the feeble freedoms just refers to all of the lies, essentially, that we tell our students in order to sustain the way that white supremacist logic governs our school spaces. We say that this is the right way and this is going to benefit you, and it's ultimately a lie. It's actually more damaging than anything else.
So we have these feeble freedoms, right? And that's the current reality. In the book, you talk about vision-driven justice. So what does this justice carpentry look like that kind of gets us away from this feast of feeble freedoms?
Yeah, so, I say that, give us the tools to be the carpenters of our own justice, because I have a lot of, I work with educators who are really wanting to make a difference, and they're like, well, what do we do, right? What do we do about this? And when do we speak about this? What do we do? And I say, the young people know. Like, even if young people can't name everything that's going on, they feel it in their spirit, in their bones, in their experience. And not having it named actually causes a great deal of cognitive dissonance for a lot of young people. So this carpentry, like helping us be the carpenters of our own justice, is something that I feel blessed to have had in my own journey. Is that along the way, there were educators telling me the truth. Facts. And that truth meant that I was getting tools to critically analyze and question and push against the systems of power that were working on me at the same time as I was learning to master those systems, right? Mm-hmm. It's not an either or. Like, now I'm in a position, I did not become a PhD by not knowing how to master the standards and norms of these institutions.
Right, indeed.
But at the same time, the reason that I'm a critical scholar, the reason why I'm a community engaged and social justice oriented scholar, is because as I was coming up, I was not fed the lie that this system is working in my favor. I was understanding that this is a game I'm playing here, which means that as I gain access and power, I'm going to continue to shift it. And so the carpentry piece is like, rather than this feast of feeble freedoms where we're lying to our young people about what's happening and they're feeling the pain anyway, let us arm our young people with the tools and work alongside them to make changes in this system that they know is broken, at the same time as we work on equipping them to master it, so that as they move into positions of power, they're able to dismantle and change and transform things in meaningful ways.
You just talked about like a type of education that is societally aware and systemically aware, right?
Right.
And that kind of touched on a question that we're about to ask you regarding what Harold Cruz talked about, the crisis of the Negro intellectual, and what Carter G. Woodson talked about in terms of the miseducation of the Negro. Like, the more you go through the corridors of academia, the more isolated we can become from our communities to do the very thing that you were referring to. Like, how do you specifically avoid having your community-based work being devalued by academic institutions?
I am personally very unapologetic about it. But for me, having 2 feet in the communities and knowing how to speak the language of the academy in terms of what they think they value and what they say they value. At this point, we're in a time period where there are enough institutions that are at the very least, languaging equity and justice and all of this in their mission and in their vision. And they know well that they do not have the vision, the tools. They don't know how to accomplish that. They just know how to name it. Right. So that's one of the ways that I show up. I'm like, let's add some substance and integrity to this language. Here's the ways that we're going to do it. Right. And I look for that point of convergence, that point where I'm like, this is a deep need. You're starving for this. On the flip side, I'm of the mindset that access cannot continue to mean this thing that I'm talking about, that we erase ourselves, that we're different people in the room, but we have the same curriculum, that we have the same standards. That conversation at the level of leadership and structure in these institutions is like, how are we going to actually and sustainably reimagine this institution in the service of the people of color that are now here, that now have quote unquote access? And I say that with the knowledge that institutional oppression is intentional, right? I get that. Like, so it's not like there's a bunch of people sitting around like, oh, we were waiting to be equitable. We get it. Like, definitely institutional oppression benefits the powers that be. And so this is where it becomes a matter of justice, of fighting for that, right? So it becomes a point of advocacy to say, yo, if you're going to have this language in here, we're going to live up to it. And if you're going to have our presence here, then the substance of our presence needs to be regarded and centered. And basically, I assert it in that way. So that yeah, and I won't stay within spaces that don't nourish that.
Right.
So that's So it's like I
can imagine, and that last piece right there, like you won't stay. I can imagine that being the preservation of your own mental well-being and just health. Just because you talk about that a bit in terms of this work. And how we have to make sure that we are invested in self-care and really looking at the internalized oppression that we have to confront and almost gets augmented when we're fighting, these systems or trying to improve these systems. I think that is a really important kind of caveat when it comes to doing this work, like knowing when to let go. So.
Oh, absolutely.
With the assertion of language and with that, and with language being so much a part of your colloquy. You talk about the cultural wealth of being multilingual in the book and in your TED Talks. What would you say to folks who say that the classroom should be reserved for learning standard American English and that all other languages can be used in other places?
So I would say that that's a real subtle way to perpetuate racism. The idea that my linguistic and cultural practices belong in a certain time and place is a part of what my work is seeking to dismantle, right? So even to this day, I get a lot of educators mistake my TED Talk as a way to support code switching. The idea that, it's appropriate to speak here in this particular way, but you got to know the time and place to speak, So it's like, what is the time and place for my identity to be appropriate? When I have these conversations, I often bring up the historical underpinnings of how the English language and standard English became so normative, and it's fraught with a lot of violence, it's steeped in colonization. And there was a period in history where English wasn't even a valued language. It was spoken by the poor, and the elite didn't even think it was valuable. And so to understand that language is a living thing, one of the things that I try to establish is that there's a political connection between the way that language is policed and the way that it's standardized. It's not neutral. It's not just, we're trying to have a universal language. No. There's a political history behind what languages get centered and standardized, and that political history is deeply embedded in the subjugation of people who look like me. And so, go ahead.
But sis, what they need that language in this? You talked about how they need to navigate the systems, right? So don't they need as much class time as possible to speak standard academic English?
So my thing is that it doesn't have to be an either or. So I believe, right, a lot of my work is rooted in culturally sustaining pedagogy. And culturally sustaining pedagogy is about moving from hierarchy to pluralism, to cultural pluralism. It's not about abandoning a certain cultural practice. It's about putting it alongside other ways of knowing as equally valuable. And so for now, because we are inundated with this systemic understanding of white middle class values as what it is, I'm not going to sit back and let our young people be not equipped with those tools. But there has to be a conversation about how that hierarchy is oppressive, and we have to move towards the pluralism where we're saying there are actually multiple ways of expressing and knowing and being and engaging in the world that are valuable. And we actually know that. Because outside of the classroom and in popular culture, for example, a lot of these corporations and institutions, they exploit the value of diverse ways of knowing for their own gain, because they know it's valuable, because they know it has mass appeal, because they know it has power,
So are you telling us?
It's a political game.
So are you telling? I'm so sorry. Are you telling us that copular absence and constant variations are attributes that we need within this language?
Say that one more time. Copula absence, yes.
And constant variation. We need. So you're just telling me that we need these things within the classroom because of the power that it holds, especially in commercials, especially in. I see. Okay, understandable.
Yo, hip hop culture has a global appeal in a way that no other cultural practice in the world. It doesn't resonate. So if you have this culture that's replete with all of these, it's so much nuance within hip hop culture, but it has global impact and appeal. That power cannot be questioned, right? The fact that we push it aside, it's saying a lot. But yeah, we need that. We need all of those variations within our school spaces.
And part of my battler's advocate. I don't use devil's advocate. I say battler's advocate. So I had to throw in a little monkey wrench in there, saying how come we can't only focus on standard academic English in the classroom if they need it for systems. But yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll be actually I just got done giving a keynote where I talked a bit about my own malpractice in instruction. Where even as quote unquote woke as I thought I was, there were moments where I was marginalizing English variants. You know what I'm saying? So, and that goes back to that whole thing you talked about that really resonated with me as an educator of color, making sure that you are dealing with your internalized oppression on a daily basis. Because what you don't deal with, your students will deal with. You talked about hip hop being this international juggernaut that just has this mass appeal worldwide. You talk about thug life in the book, right? The hate you give little infants F's everybody, right? What's your favorite Pac song?
Dear Mama.
It's probably mine too.
Yeah, I just value the complexity and authenticity, like the rawness of that piece.
Yeah.
That it's this powerful ode, but at the same time, it's raw, it's real, it's nuanced. There's layers to it, right? To the dynamics of that relationship that I appreciate in that song.
Word up.
That's what's up.
So you did this very unique thing in the book where you fuse and co-analyze Harry Potter and Black Girl Magic. Definitely didn't see that coming, right? What role do you see Black Girl Magic playing in the transformation of how teachers teach and how students learn?
Oh, that's a bomb question. Black Girl Magic, when it comes to thinking about intersectionality and understanding the position that Black girls and Black women are in as being marginalized racially and in terms of gender, there is an orientation that Black girls and women have in the whole social spectrum of the world that actually adds unique value and power. Right. And so I say that the role that plays is tapping into that magic, right? Not discounting the power that that intersection provides for us. It's something very rich there, and I think that's what Black Girl Magic is. It's really understanding that this position, even though it wasn't meant for good, it has given a lot of power. So I would say that for people, for the work of teaching and learning, I would say we'll be tapping into understanding that as an intersectional orientation that offers a unique perspective on the world than any other, and I encourage the exploration of many different intersections, but that's a particular one that people are exploring in very powerful ways. And as a Black woman, I definitely am thriving in the magic of it all. So
for sure. So we had this conversation protocol. It's not quite a Freudian circle, but we have this quick protocol called A side, B side, where we just want you to quickly identify the pros and cons of a person, place, or thing. Right, so we're only going to do like two of them because for the sake of time, because we got to get your top 5 dead or alive too before you get off the air. A side and B side of social justice in academia. What's the pro? Oh yeah, I'm sorry. What's the pro? What's the benefit? What's the pro part of social justice in academia, and what's like the challenge or the con or the
okay. So the pro side is that academia is a space where we could hold it is its own system of power that can be self-reflexive and critical of the way that social justice it affects all of our institutions. Academia is also the space where a lot of what becomes the learning and becomes our system of education flows out of academia, right? Like our teacher education programs, then it's the spaces where knowledge is created and it all flows down into policy and practice. So having those social justice orientations at the level of academia is very important to make sure that the full organism is, in that way. On the same token, academia, as its very hegemonic and oppressive way, has a tendency to believe that it is the sole producer of knowledge in our world, and completely disregards the way that knowledge, culture, power, value exists beyond the scope of academia, and it just illegitimates everything else. So as an academic, it's more colonial logic, right? Like I name and claim things that somebody sitting in the hood on the block probably, the people on the block been philosophers since, like forever, right? So if you on the block and you have some kind of philosophy about something, it's just gonna stay right there with you on the block. But as soon as I'm in academia and I'm like, this social, and I name it and I claim it, then there's this currency, this social currency and actually economic currency that comes with it, and it's disgusting, right? And so I would say that the con side is the way that that dynamic continues to reify the marginalization of spaces outside of academia.
Word up. Last one before we hop in the top 5, dead or alive. The A side and B side of Dumbledore.
Oh man, I love Harry Potter. So the A side of Dumbledore is that, on the pro side, you need a sage. Like we all need people that are guiding posts in our lives that are helping us to see within ourselves what we're not able to see. And there's a power in that. There's a power in finding that. There's a power in thinking about how you can be that for somebody. I would say on the con side of Dumbledore, the con side of Dumbledore is that Dumbledore low-key was like real power hungry. Like he kind of decided for a lot of people what the outcome was going to be and how it was going to happen without totally engaging them. And that's not necessarily a model that I believe in real time, right? That even as somebody who wants to be, I want to be a leader. I want to be a leader in community with people, a community of people. I want to, right? I want to be with people and not, I want to work with people and not for people, right? And Dumbledore was positioned in such a way, just like, the typical old white male, sage figure, as somebody who's, this power that is there for X, Y, and Z. So there's always that weird tension, and I have to be careful of that, especially as I gain momentum as a person that has any kind of power or leadership. I don't ever want to silence or diminish the value of working with people and try to, be a voice or act for them.
So for your closing question, what is your top 5, dead or alive?
Whew, top 5 dead or alive,
right,
and what?
MCs. Now if explicitly doing MCs is a little challenging, just throwing a couple other people. I know that during the sound check you had immediately jumped to some Lauryn Hill. Everything is everything.
Yeah. So it's exclusively MCs?
It don't have to be. Like if you have a hard time trying to think of like some folks, that aren't that are MCs, like throwing your top. Matter of fact, just throwing your top 5 artists of all time. I think that's the equitable thing to do.
So when you say artist, I'm sorry, but I can't not say Toni Morrison's name.
Yeah, you did a piece about Beloved.
Right, that. Yo, Toni Morrison changed my life. Yeah. And so Toni Morrison has to be on that list. She an MC in her own way. Absolutely. And Lauryn Hill for sure. Lauryn Hill also is someone who changed my life.
El Boogie.
You know, this is gonna be real tricky right now because I'm really feeling a way about Jay-Z. I cannot lie. I'm feeling a way.
A lot of us are.
I'm feeling a
We just got
way,
done talking about that the last episode.
Yo, the thing is that I have not 444 made me connect with Jay-Z in a way that I never thought was possible. I know that a lot of people have been Jay-Z stans forever.
Right.
But 444 was an evolution that really resonated with me. And then this little stunt that's going on right now is breaking my heart. But if it wasn't for the tension I'm feeling right now, he on that list for sure. Definitely Tupac.
Okay,
Kendrick,
all right,
for sure.
So we got
Was
Kendrick.
that 5?
Yep,
or is that 4?
Kendrick, Toni Morrison, Jay-Z, El Boogie, and Pac. That's a mighty 5. That is a mighty 5.
Yes.
Yo, Sister Jamila, it has been nothing but a pleasure having you on Cipher Scholars. Hopefully this will not be the last time. Black Appetite, White Food, Issues of Race, Voice, and Justice Within and Beyond the Classroom is in bookstores now. Can you let the world know how they can contact you real quick before we hop off air?
Absolutely. Jamila_Lyiscott on IG and Twitter. JamilaLyiscott.com. And or Black Appetite White Food is on Routledge.com and it's on Amazon.com as well.
Awesome. For all those who tuned in a little late, y'all been listening to Cipher Scholars, part education, part hip-hop, all culture. Catch us every Tuesday from 1:30 to 2 on 104.3 WAYO FM, which you can also catch us online through IG, Twitter, Facebook. Peace and progress.
Thank you.
Thank you.